Thank you, Dr. Arvind Gupta. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I must disabuse you of the notion that no great wisdom is going to be passed down from this rostrum. All that I am going to do, insofar as India's maritime domain is concerned, is to pass down certain facts that I have been looking at for the last couple of years and correlate them with the greatness that India used to assume in the entire world up to the 12th century. And what a devastating effect this neglect has had on the sea-blind Indians everywhere, all stakeholders, from control in Delhi right up to the seashore. First of all, I thought I will just revise everybody's memory about the 3 primary out of the 5 oceans of this world. As you all know, the Pacific is the largest with 155 million square kilometers of area, followed by the Atlantic, 76, and then the Indian Ocean, which is the smallest of the 3 which are actually used for transaction of goods and passengers, on which the entire world and every country's economy runs. This ocean, despite being the smallest at 68.8 million square kilometers, actually, if you notice, which we never appreciate, is the worst of the lot, not only in size, but also insofar as access to the rest of the world is concerned. It does not have access and exit points. Actually, the only access points are choke points, as you will see in a subsequent slide. Now, you must have heard a couple of times in this auditorium and elsewhere in IDSA, that 100,000 ships on average cross this ocean every year. But the interesting part, apart from the fact that Malacca Strait gets about 60,000 of them, the interesting part is that most of the important shipping lanes have no choice but to hug the Indian coastline, particularly the west coast, and also hug the southern part of our peninsula and Sri Lanka before going anywhere else, whether they are coming from west to east or east to west. Now, these are the choke points that I was talking about. One that is missing over here is marked. As you can see, one thick red line going past Cape of Good Hope upwards is the Mozambique Channel. So 8 choke points are the only entry and access points in the Indian Ocean, unlike the Pacific and the Atlantic, which are vast and also do not have a roof. The West Asia and South Asia landmass provides a roof to this ocean. So it's a closeted ocean, and therefore also poses a great amount of danger insofar as safety of navigation as well as security of people, as has been witnessed in various avenues of asymmetric warfare as well as piracy in the last couple of years. Just look at this map. Isn't it a cartographer's delight? You know, looking at this map, which we rarely look at, particularly the relief map of India jutting its promontory, its peninsula into the Indian Ocean, reminds one of Winston Churchill's quote, the infamous quote that said, India is a geographical term. It is no more a united nation than the equator. Of course, he was talking in political hue at the time of independence, but I'm sure he must be turning in his grave seeing the state of India, which has been progressing primarily because of the ocean domain. Look at the west coast of India. This relief map shows you that the continental shelf on the west coast has a very shallow gradient and extends between Gujarat and Maharashtra to as much as 100 miles before you reach 100 meters of depth. The east coast is diametrically opposite. The east coast continental shelf is very close to the entire coast, and particularly off Vizag and Kakinada, close to the Tamil Nadu coast as well. It's you can reach depths of 1,000 meters in less than 50 nautical miles, and thereafter it just multiplies at the rate of 50 to 100 meters for every mile traversed. Whereas on the west coast, you travel a mile to gain a meter, and many a times you travel 10 miles to gain a meter. Yet, the interesting prospect of this part of nature is that despite having a shallow gradient on the west coast, 68% of our fish catch comes from the west coast between Gujarat and Maharashtra, and a little bit from the Konkan and Kerala coast. And only 30% is harvested on the east coast. There are reasons which I will elaborate as we go on. Now, geography and contemporary history of India, as you all know, has dictated that the 15,000 kilometers of our land borders, including the green patches of our friendly countries, is of no use insofar as transaction of goods and passengers is concerned. Therefore, we have no choice but to transact business with the rest of the world through the seas. So should we call it part of a continent, or should we not rightly name India as an island nation? Just look at the 6 largest peninsulas of the world, starting with the Arabian Peninsula at 3.2 million square kilometers. India ranks second. The Indian Peninsula is 2.07 million square kilometers, almost as much as the Indian EEZ counts, followed by the Alaskan Peninsula, followed by the Labrador Peninsula, followed by Scandinavia, and finally the Iberian Peninsula. And the other interesting part is while the Arabian Peninsula happens to be the largest in the world, its components include 6 countries. The Indian Peninsula is 1 country. This has meaning, because it is because of this peninsula that we call ourselves an island nation. We can call ourselves an island nation. Most business of hardware is transacted to the rest of the world through the medium of the seas. And that's why we keep saying between 90 and 95% by volume and weight and 77% by value of our trade is transacted through the oceans. Many of you must have seen this kind of an inverted map by many a sailor in this auditorium from the Navy. And there is a reason why one projects this kind of a map, to get the correct perspective and imbibe the correct amount of geostrategic significance that the Indian Peninsula and the Indian nation harnesses in this part of the world. Only by inverting this map can you realize how badly the Indian Peninsula juts out, literally driving a wedge into an otherwise symmetric goblet. If I take you through a strategic gyre of the North Indian Ocean and see the effect, the all-important sea lines of communications, including the most important energy lines of communications, come out of the Strait of Hormuz and Gulf of Aden, and vice versa with empty tankers coming out of the east, have to hug the Indian coast as if to pay obeisance to this country, which is the only country on whom an ocean is being built, much to the chagrin of some people to the east and the north. Now, before we go further, we need to also understand that maritime countries are naturally blessed. Look at these 44 landlocked countries of the world. They are relative have-nots. You look at any country which is landlocked. I'll give you 3 exceptions. And those exceptions are Austria, Switzerland, and a tiny country which is sandwiched between the 2 of them, Liechtenstein, which became infamous because of LGT Bank. Actually, it's a very famous country. We called it infamous because of some Indians having harvested some money over there. Actually, Liechtenstein is such a tiny country you can hardly make out on the map. It's just 160 square kilometers in size. Has a population of just 35,000 people. Has only 2 products to sell to the rest of the world. Natural ceramic, which is used by oldies like me for dentures. I haven't started using them though as yet. And sausage coverings. That's all. But the largest amount of its GDP is contributed by the financial market. Despite having a population of only 35,000 people, German-speaking people, the only country which is covered completely by the Alps, the only country which is progressing so well despite being doubly landlocked. It means it has to cross two land borders to reach the sea, is because it has 73,000 what are called letterbox companies. It's a financial haven, more important than Switzerland. And it offers tax sobs by levying a maximum of 10% corporate tax on companies which want to register themselves. So all these companies belong to Europe and to many other parts of the world, including some Gulf states. By the way, I said right in the beginning that maritime countries are naturally blessed and landlocked countries are relative have-nots. Why? Because they don't have access to the sea. So how is it that these three countries, I told you enough about Liechtenstein, what about Austria and Switzerland? We've all eaten enough and heard about dairy products which are the most famous apart from Australia, from Switzerland and Austria. We've heard about precision machinery, we've heard about specialized industry, we've heard about heavy machinery from Switzerland, farming products. But apart from that, we've also heard enough about tourism, unbeatable destinations. Now, these three countries also happen to be amongst the top 10 insofar as per capita GDP in PPP terms is concerned. Between $48,000 to $56,000 is the value for Austria and Switzerland. And at #1 position in the world till 2011 was Liechtenstein at $118,000 per capita. It got pipped by Qatar last year by about $1,000. How did they do it? Switzerland, human innovation. Just like Indian minds who are sitting abroad in lands of opportunity and driving those economies like juggernauts. A man in 1970 started a ship, bought a single ship, and when the business, his business relished, he expanded it to call it the MSC line, which has today 30,000 offices all over the world. One of the largest offices in Ballard Estate, in a beautiful heritage building. That's called the Mediterranean Shipping Company. Landlocked country. It has 472 container carriers. It refuses to invest in any other kind of vessel. It was #1 in the world till 2 years ago, and now Maersk Lines, the best known in the world, has pipped it by 200 ships. And as you know, Emma Maersk, this is the business of the maritime domain, is the largest container carrier in the world, can carry 15,000 20-foot containers. 15,000. MSC has 472 ships. In the years of the recession, 2008 and 2009, the rest of the world was crumbling insofar as shipping lines are concerned. Most shipping lines, including Maersk, was decommissioning ships, which were just 10 years old. MSC did. Human innovation. Look at the offshore resources that the sea offers. Energy, that is fossil fuels, and now there are all kinds, shale, coal bed, methane, gas crystals, mineral resources, polymetallic nodules, industries. All industries in maritime states love to be on the seashore. A, access to the sea, and they go closest to vicinities of ports with which they are most comfortable. B, there is no dearth of water. They have all converted to use of seawater for cooling of furnaces, for use in industries like calcining, for industries like pelletization, iron ore, etc. Fishing, which is a given, and we take it for granted, as you will see as I go forward. Ports, the greatest asset to a maritime state. Access to the sea, window to the world. Shipyards. Any country, any maritime state that has progressed has had a large shipbuilding industry. They treat from China to South Korea to Japan, starting the other way around. Japan started it all. Have treated shipbuilding industry as a strategic industry. They give them tax ops, they give them all kinds of incentives so that downstream ancillary units can generate employment. Shipyards themselves can generate employment. They can earn a lot of revenue for the country. Tourism venues on the sea coast, not just beaches like in Goa, but heritage sites which have all existed on the sea coast more than on the hinterland, anywhere. Maximum development has always taken place on the seashore. Today, ladies and gentlemen, the world population is 6 billion point something. 3 billion out of them, as per UNESCAP, last year's figures, live within 60 to 200 kilometers, that belt which we call the littoral belt of maritime states. Why? Because for millennia, it has been a proven point in the minds of human beings that if you want to progress economically, you have to set up industry closest to the access to the world and do fishing for subsistence apart from marketing, and have limitless opportunities insofar as employment is concerned. Now let us look at the maritime zones. I've taken our own example because the topic is maritime domain of India, but this applies to any country. 12 nautical miles after UNCLOS 3 in 1982 was declared as the territorial waters of any country. 24 is a contiguous zone, so up to 12 nautical miles the law of the land applies. And 200 nautical miles the maximum EEZ. As you can see, there is a bulge on the west coast because of the Lakshadweep Islands. We get a benefit there. And a separate pocket of EEZ, which is huge. It gets compressed on its east around the Andaman Nicobar Islands because of division between states like Thailand, Indonesia, etc. And it gets completely compressed because of Sri Lanka in the southeast. Our land area is 3.28 million square kilometers, and the EEZ, you must have heard over the last 4 or 5 years. In 2009, May of 2009 was the last date for all countries to submit their claims for an extended EEZ up to 350 nautical miles. So we are set to gain another 500,000 square kilometers as soon as the results are declared and all maritime boundary disputes are resolved. We have a ongoing arbitration case between Bangladesh and us, and hopefully it will be resolved to the benefit of both countries very soon. Now, this is a slide which has been made by an amateur or someone like me, and cannot be quoted and cited anywhere because this is just a rough sketch. This is the green shaded area is the only one that we will benefit from and benefit with when the extended EEZ is applied to us. Everywhere you do not get 350 nautical miles, firstly because of Sri Lanka in the southeast, and secondly, there are conditions that apply to the extension of the EEZ based on the extension of the continental shelf, the continental margin and the slope. Yet, it'll add 500,000 square kilometers to our existing EEZ. Now what does the offshore area offer us? And the coastline offers? Beautiful beaches for our own population and for tourism. Fossil fuels, of which we have been hearing a lot since the early 70s, first from the Bombay offshore and thereafter on the east coast, including now gas exploration in deep waters. Fish, of which I have spoken a little bit earlier. All kinds of seafood that can be harvested from within the EEZ. And mineral resources. Some of them are strategic minerals. Just to remind you, we produce 25% of all oil produced in the country from the EEZ. That is because it's a low figure, but not just because the Bombay offshore the western offshore has already peaked or saturated, as they say, in production. but also because Ken, as you know, recently has started upping its production in Rajasthan, which has been a great find and promises a lot in the next 5 years. But we have till now explored and exploited oil only in shallow waters up to about 100 meters. The technology for deep water oil exploration and exploitation already exists. It is expensive, but it already exists, and hopefully, like Dhirubhai Ambani D6 for gas production in the East Coast, they are floating. Even their anchors, their moorings are floating. They are floating rigs which are positioned by a special technology. And hopefully you can actually, like the North Sea and elsewhere, and the Gulf of Mexico, start exploring oil in the Indian EEZ even up to 2,000 meters of depth. Now I spoke about all industries prefer the seashore. This is one example. Whether it is a thermal power plant, or it is a cement factory, or it is a steel plant which requires millions of gallons of water. Everyone loves the sea. Look at that trestle bridge with a mega pump at its seaward end. All industries which finally manage to locate themselves on the sea coast, they put up a trestle bridge to start suction of seawater, which is used for anything where they originally used to use only fresh water. Desalination plants. Tamil Nadu, as you know, used to be the worst hit state in so far as availability of fresh water is concerned. And with a Spanish company, in 2011 they commissioned a mega plant just at the northern border between Chennai, between Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, on the seashore. I forget the figure. It's more than 1 million gallons a day of fresh water, desalination plant. It's like an RO plant. Look at this picture of a private port on the east coast, Gangavaram Pipeline. It had only 6 berths in 2011, and now it is as per plan expanding itself to another 6. The berths were used in phase 1 primarily for import of oil from Indonesia, import of coal from Indonesia and Australia, which is still coming in, and export of iron ore. Now in the year 2010, with these huge grab loaders that you can see above the ship which has been berthed, with a conveyor system, coal is loaded. With these 2 grab loaders, this port achieved in late 2010 a world record of sorts when he loaded a ship up to 67,000 tons of coal in 24 hours. So the ship was there only for 24 hours, a large coal carrier, bulk carrier, and it went down. Looking at that and looking at this competition, Vizag port, which is just 18 nautical miles north, otherwise all major ports which are treated as trusts by the government of India, centrally controlled, are unpopular insofar as their efficiency and effectiveness is concerned. But Vizag port, under a PPP partnership, had just upgraded its ore handling equipment for export of iron ore. And about, I think, 3 or 4 months after this incident, after this event, they achieved another landmark, which was a global landmark, of loading 100,000 tons of iron ore in a mega carrier, destined for China. Fishing. We take fishing for a maritime state, a coastal state, for granted. The most unorganized, if not disorganized, sector in this country. 7,516 kilometers of coastline is no joke. Look at these impressive figures. We have a total of 200,000 traditional fishing craft. Traditional and motorized and mechanized. If you ask the Coast Guard, they will tell you that this was the figure of registered vessels, many of them which are truly traditional, as I will show you in a picture a little while later, are not even registered even after 2611, because you can't reach estuaries and tributaries from where these guys come out into the sea. Only 8.67 million tons were harvested in 12-13, out of which 3.37 million is marine fish. You would have thought the EEZ is so huge that the later figure applied to marine fish. Seafood was just 3.37 million tons. 5.3 million tons comes from inland waters, including aqua farming. We have a potential of at least 6 million tons from marine resources and 8 million tons per year from inland. In fact, you'll be surprised. Inland water, aqua farming and aquaculture has a huge potential. Today we have only 43,000 hectares for shrimp farming inside the country. But you look at this figure of available space in the water. We have 14,000 square kilometers of brackish water, 16,000 square kilometers of lakes and ponds and swamps, and 195,000 kilometers of rivers and canals. Limitless opportunity to expand aqua farming. That's what China has done. Directly, as per the Ministry of Agriculture, 14.5 million people are employed by the profession of fishing. Indirectly, apart from their families, it would be at least 10 times if you take into account tackling equipment, boat servicing and boat manufacturing, trawler servicing, maintenance organizations, ports, fish landing sites, retailers, distributors, exporters. This is obviously not a picture from India, as you can see the human beings in this picture. This is a picture of the variety of fish from Peru. This is a country with just 2,400 kilometers of coastline compared to ours, which is 7,500 kilometers. How is it doing so well? Its harvest for this year up to December is forecast to be 5 million tons, which is about 2% less than last year. In the 60s, Peru was cited as an example of the greatest exploitation of the sea, as fishing alone used to contribute up to 68% of its GDP in the 60s. Today it contributes much less. Most of the fish that Peru harvests is from the sea, all kinds of varieties. Most of it goes to North America and Europe. But it is also one of the largest producers of fish meal. As you know, it is used for many a requirement: poultry, piggeries, even fertilizers. One million tons of fish meal from Peru is exported to China. This is a picture of Indian fish. There are no human beings, but the fish variety you can see is phenomenally good. This is a picture from 5 pages of a brochure that is sent out by the Seafood Exporters Association of India, which has a secretariat in God's own country, Kerala. You know, a Malayali cannot live without fish, just like the Mexican can't live without beans. So rightly so, the secretariat was situated in Kerala. Also, they are a very progressive people insofar as exports are concerned. Who grabbed in this world the maximum amount of import from India of seafood? Vietnam. Last year, it imported 23 tons worth of fish. The whole of EU imported only 17 tons from India. America imported 8 to 9 tons. China imported only 8 tons as against about 10 tons the previous year. And as per FAO's report of last year, China is going to go through a terrible turmoil insofar as fish for domestic consumption is concerned, because the upper 10% layer of its population, which is super rich right now, are wanting to eat only sea cucumbers, only squids and special varieties of fish which are very expensive. But domestic consumption has really gone up in China. This is the story of India. This is what constitutes the bulk of those 200,000 or 300,000 fishing vessels. Some of these traditional craft, like the canoe in the center, seem to have come all the way from the Salamis Bay in 480 BCE. We just don't seem to improve, but we are very happy because most of our fishermen are still doing subsistence farming. This is the mechanized and motorized variety. In the early 90s, with liberalization in India, when Mercury and who are the others, Yamaha and Yokohama engines started flowing in large numbers, Kerala was the first state to catch hold of them and ask for only those run by kerosene, because kerosene was issued under ration cards for fishermen. That is how traditional canoes and other boats were fitted out with OBMs. They are called the motorized vessels now. And the top two are the great variety of trawlers in this country, including deep sea fishing trawlers. Some of them don't even have a refrigeration compartment. They carry fish with salt sprayed on them. Some of them who are able to afford a little more, they carry chemical ice that can last up to 4 or 5 days. Of course, there are trawlers, very few, which have refrigerated compartments because they run on good diesel engines. Look at China. It is not only fashionable to compare for any country today with anything to do with in the economic field with China, but there is a point to be noted in everything they do. The total aquatic production in 2012 is 58 million tons. We harvested 8.67 million tons. They have a coastline which is about double that of ours, the east coast of China, 14,000 kilometers. But 72% of the produce came from inland waters, and they are expanding at the rate of 10 to 15% per annum. The total trade value of fish imported and exported, they do a lot of import of special varieties and fish meat, was $28 billion. India's total exports was $4 billion. We applauded, actually applauded, because for the first time it jumped by nearly $500 million in 1 year. Out of $28 billion, the trade surplus was $10 billion. This is the reason why China does so well. This is the Fish Expo Mart in Beijing, where an annual international exhibition is also held, apart from a round-the-year running exhibition for domestic use. And they hold this, it's called China Fish. They hold it in May every year. So in May 2013, when they held this exhibition, 86 countries sent their delegation, about 2,000 people, which grabbed all the export orders from China. And domestic users, the exhibitors, they have already blocked all stalls for the next year, in 2014. That's not all. In the city of Weihai, they have this exposition center. It's the exposition, the annual exhibition is called China Tackle. All tackling equipment for fishing as a hobby, for tackling, angling, right up to deep sea fishing trawlers. Every equipment, and at the lowest standard, as you know, is exhibited and grabbed by everybody within China and outside, year after year. That's why it does well. What are India's needs? Deep sea fishing fleet, long endurance fleet. China has 1,900 vessels. Long ago, well before the UNCLOS 82, they started acquiring rights to fish in some African waters. As soon as Hu Jintao went a couple of years ago to some countries in Africa, they grabbed fishing rights on profit-sharing basis with the same countries within their EEZ. We have no long endurance fishing trawlers. We have deep sea fishing fleet which is pitiable to look at. Therefore, we allow licenses and letters of permission to foreign companies to come and fish over here and share the profit. We must have friendly export procedures, friendly licensing and LOP policy for Indian companies, and export-friendly tariffs. There is with some regularity, the Indian exporters and agents in league up the tariff for lifting reefer trade in refrigerated containers, which reduces the profits for Indian exporters. Because after all, it is a competition, particularly in Southeast Asia. This is the kind of vessels that are operated by Japan, Taiwan, even Indonesia. And these are what we need for deep sea fishing. We just don't go and into the deep waters of particularly the east coast in the Indian EEZ, where there are demersal and benthic varieties which are left unharvested year after year. Now you must have heard of the Maruta. You know, in '83 when Maruti was announced and it started coming in CKDs, Punjab was the first state which said, "Hum kisi se kam nahi." So they produced a Maruta out of a jeep chassis, followed by a truck chassis. What did they put on it? They put an agricultural pump, and they used to charge 10 paisa from village to village for passengers. The same technology is going. As you can see, there is an interesting signboard down below which you can read in Hindi, and it does not have a license plate. And the police never checks it. It goes even on the expressway where we pay 150 rupees from Ambala to Jalandhar. That's the market. This Haryana and Punjab combined is a country of jugaad. So I wish actually they were on the sea coast. Perhaps through jugaad they would have made better fishing trawlers even for deep sea fishing into 2,000 meters of depth, and would have harvested enough for sustenance and economic progress. But then the only problem is Punjab and Haryana were to be on the sea coast, then all the fish harvested instead of being exported would have been consumed as machhi amritsari. Now the story of the Indian EEZ, particularly on the east coast, is that most fish die of old age rather than by being harvested. Other minerals, millions of tons of strategic minerals, including gold, silver, tin, zinc, polymetallic nodules, as well as polymetallic sulfides, cobalt, nickel, copper, of which we have no reserves on mainland. India was the first, not just one of the first out of Japan, Russia, France, India, to be granted pioneer status, the very first. Because in this field, our scientists from NIOT, later within the DOT and now under Ministry of Earth Sciences, had done with, I think the name was SS or MS Gaveshan, which later on was adopted by the DRDO, followed by Sagar Kanya in the 80s, which was a very modern ship. They did a lot of bathymetric surveys and a lot of deep sea surveys with grabs, with dredge grabs, and now they have an ROV, remotely operated vessel, which has been demonstrated to the International Seabed Authority up to 5,200 meters of depth. This is the area in the left part of the slide, 1,000 nautical miles south of Cape Comorin or Kanyakumari. 150,000 square kilometers was proposed by India, and it was allotted in 1987 as the first pioneer state out of 7. All the other countries like Japan, France, Russia and a few others were allotted sites which they sought for in the Pacific. The Indian Ocean, as you can see on the right side of the slide, is very rich. Area covered by the nodules in the Indian Ocean, 10 to 18 million square kilometers, though we have taken the best slot out of that of only 150,000 square kilometers. Now there was a deal when the ISPA, International Seabed Authority, was formed after UNCLOS, that any country which becomes pioneer status, which assumes pioneer status and allotted a site in any ocean, will have to prove by a pilot plant and a pilot project some kind of exploitation apart from exploration. And within 15 years, give back 50% of the real estate allocated, which we did by the year 1994. This is the kind of assessment that our scientists have made over the years, the kinds of millions of tons of strategic material, cobalt, nickel and copper are strategic materials. Here comes China. In July of 11, a Chinese state-owned company, Comcar, asked for and got 10,000 square kilometers of patch in the southwest Indian ridge. Only 10,000 square kilometers. It's in small parcels as shown, of a few hundred square kilometers to a few thousand square kilometers each. That was a point of thrust and great amount of aggression in our speed. I should say velocity, insofar as our efforts at speeding up exploration was concerned. Because now China has come into the Indian Ocean, but there's nothing to worry. You can ask in any ocean. This was actually a proposal made by an insignificant person from an insignificant country in 1967. Ambassador Pardo has become a name in maritime affairs. He was the Maltese envoy in 1967, and he said, developed countries are grabbing everything. Remember the Truman Proclamation in 1945? When well before the 82 UNCLOS, he claimed the entire continental shelf of the United States for use of for exploitation of mineral resources, fossil fuels, and later another proclamation for fishing. This was protested by many others. He had the money, America had the technology and the wherewithal to do what it wanted. And this is what Ambassador Pardo said, that the high seas, after UNCLOS was concluded in 1982, are the common heritage of mankind. Any country should be allowed to exploit if it proves itself with the wherewithal, with the hardware, with the technology, and with the mind to do so. Look at India's ports. We have a total of 13 major and 185 minor ports. Actually today, the total number of ports is about 200, all told. But look at this pie chart. Gujarat has 41 minor and intermediate ports. Why am I saying Gujarat? Why am I emphasizing so much on Gujarat and not so much on Maharashtra? It is the minor and intermediate ports, most of them privately developed, starting with Mudra of Adani's, which has been in the news for wrong reasons recently, environmental clearance, etc., have made the largest leaps insofar as economic progress and efficiency of port throughput is concerned. Why? Because all these fellows claim that there is as good as single window clearance, least amount of red tape, and the Gujarat Maritime Board was the first in this country to have established itself. All 9 maritime coastal states have not yet got their maritime ports. Look at our throughput. 890 million tons after so many agendas of the National Maritime Development Program, National Maritime States Development Program, etc., in India. We got 890 million tons of throughput insofar as loading and unloading of ships was concerned in all 200 ports. The target was 1.5 billion tons by 2012. We achieved only 911. We still have a CAGR of about 5 to 7%, which is not bad. But what is bad is the major ports, Amidor ports. Containers 6.7 million TEUs or 92 million tons worth. China's figure for last year was 150 million TEUs. 10 of the largest throughput ports out of the first 20 in the world are in China, starting with Shanghai. 9.8 billion tons as against 890 million tons was the throughput of Chinese ports in the year 11-12. 7 billion tons in 2007. Why have I put it in bracket? Because in that year, Shanghai superseded Singapore as #1 port in the world insofar as throughput target of 710 million tons of steel. All 200 Indian ports, including 13 major ports, were huge acreage and huge antique infrastructure, managed only 700 million tons. Chinese are growing at 14%, except during 2 years of 2008 and 9. The problem with Indian ports is we suffer 93% utilization. One would think it should be 100. It is the other way around. And so far as ports are concerned, utilization should be as low as 80% at best. Amsterdam, Shanghai, Singapore, Hong Kong, they achieve maximum 80%. So that more berths and deeper, apart from more berths and deeper channels needed in our ports, so that berths need to wait for ships, not the other way around. In our case, the dwell time or waiting time for ships in Bombay till about 4 years ago used to be 9 days. Now you know why big ticket companies like Maersk, MSC, huge bulk carriers and tanker carriers and break bulk carriers refuse to come to Indian ports. They go to Sharjah, they go to Salalah, they go to Colombo, they go to Singapore. And all the revenue is lost. We pay more for imports, more for exports. And from there, reefer cargo comes in chota ships into Indian ports. Because nobody wants to spend money. After all, time is money. Waste time in a port. They love to get emptied out in a matter of hours and get out to the next destination. Major ports contributed 65%, but had a negative growth trend last year compared to the previous year. Minor ports from 30 in 2010 jumped to 35%. The best was Adani, Mudra port. It showed 78.4 million tons as against 29 million tons in 2007. Tuticorin, the latest of the major ports, when the latest of the government-owned ports is Ennore, but that is a corporate port. Amongst port trusts, Tuticorin is supposed to have been the latest, made in the 60s, as against others which were made in the British times. Could manage only 28.1 million tons, despite being as large as Mudra port. In fact, has much more real estate and much more infrastructure, and had 21.5 million tons 5 years earlier in 2007. These are our major ports. You can see the kind of cranes which should go into Smithsonian Museum somewhere or the other. Some of the major ports have gone into PPP partnership, which is a very good initiative taken by the government to say you can't manage yourselves because of labor unions and stevedores problems. Get into PPP models for certain berths, give it away on lease to DP, Dubai Port Worlds, etc. Vizag, Cochin, and a few other ports have done something like this for 2 or 3 berths. Now these are the private ports, starting with Mudra right on top. You can see the difference between our major ports and private ports. The upper 2 are pictures of Shanghai port. The lower 2, some other Chinese ports. I can't name them, I don't know which ones. Now this is a morph picture, but just to tell you, this is the scenario in our ports. I once flew over Chennai port while coming from the border between Andhra and Tamil Nadu. And along the coast I flew low over for 3 kilometers over Chennai. 3 kilometers short of the first gate of Chennai. That was the length of the lorries in 3 lanes when the road was meant for 1.5 lanes. There was not a single truck which had a driver inside. They had all gone for long chai break. Because logistics and evacuation is not our forte. That is a problem in major ports, despite having huge acreage. Again, a picture of one of our major ports. This is the kind of picture that you see in some of our newly developed private ports. Everything is organized. Everything is meant for evacuation at higher rates than expected. Gangavaram port. The upper picture is the coal being unloaded through conveyor out of a ship that has come from Australia or Indonesia. The lower one is iron ore out of a wagon of 70 tons being tipped by an automated tipper. It takes 20 seconds to unload and upright the wagon. So the entire rake of about 70 wagons can be emptied out in less than an hour. Again, a true picture of one of the private ports. The left extreme is a terminal in an airport, but that is how things should be. You need communication, you need infrastructure of, if not world standards, of a capacity like 4-lane access routes, merging into 6-lane highways, the quadrilateral, from all our ports. The quadrilateral was meant to serve the ports and the coastline, and dual line railway system. Look at the Indian bottoms now. We have a pitiable total tonnage of 10.7 million tons. Number of ships 1040, which looks a little impressive to us, but it is not when you look at the world. And overseas trade, only 340 ships are utilized. This is a telling picture. Look at the number of ships above 20 years of age. Globally, no sensible maritime state uses ships after 20 years of age. And the largest percentage in our case is in that category. Don't get impressed by the coastal fleet, which is showing a figure of 700 total ships. This includes vessels like tugs, offshore vessels, etc. There are a total of 118 coastal carriers only. In comparison to our 10.75 million tons, we are ranked 18th in the world, which again shows an impressive ranking, but actually it is not. We are a poor 1% of the global fleet. There's an old saying, you want to survive as a maritime state, you must have your own bottoms, and you must have your own flags, your own flag on all carriers, so that in times of crisis you can depend on your own fleet. That's what the Soviet Union did in the Cold War, that's what Russia is doing today, that's what China has been doing for ages, and that's what Japan did for a long time. Only 8.4% of trade is carried on Indian bottoms. We are a poor 1% of the global fleet. Look at Japan, 131 million tons of its fleet. China 67, Hong Kong 23, add the two and you find where they go. Singapore itself has 19 million tons, as against 10 million tons of ours. The result? Our 2011-12 freight bill was $16.3 billion, just the freight bill for carriage of goods in and out of the country, which was 82,100 crores. Of this, 14.2 billion, which is 87 to 90%, went to foreign flagships. These are figures from a CAG report 2 years ago. So it asked the government, what are you doing to make sure there are more Indian-built ships and Indian flagships? We have the highest taxation levies in the world. Therefore, nobody wants to make ships over here, nobody wants to flag them with Indian, other than SCI and Great Eastern. Disincentives you can see. It's a common story everywhere. Shipyards. We have a total of 27 shipyards against 492 in China. But subsidiary yards in China account for about a figure of 5,000 upstream in rivers, which makes sections, and that's the technology of the day for shipbuilding. That's why China has grabbed the largest book order in the world. 35% of the world global shipping orders, shipbuilding orders are with China. Second with Korea, Daewoo and Hyundai, and third with Japan now. Japan used to be number one in the 70s. We have 5 PSUs, out of which 4 of them are with the Ministry of Defense, including HSL, the latest induction. And output is truly embarrassing. Nobody makes ships because nobody gets orders, because taxation laws are terrible. There is no encouragement to the shipping industry. These are the pictures of Daewoo and Hyundai. These are the kinds of bulk carriers that you need to make at rates at which China is making. They get a lot of incentives from the state. inland waterways. A more pitiable story than shipbuilding and shipping and coastal shipping. The blue lines show you the national waterways of this country. 14,500 kilometers of inland waterways were declared after IWAI, Inland Waterways Authority, was established in 1986, out of which 4,000 plus kilometers are national waterways which are usable. Out of this, some proportion is also of state waterways which are very popular, like Goa and in the backwaters of Kerala, as against 21,000 kilometers in the US which are used. US transports 21% of all domestic cargo and a huge percentage of petroleum and coal cargo of overseas trade. India transports just 0.1% of domestic cargo. These are pictures of Indian waterways. Generally, it is the lower three pictures. The upper two need to be seen very carefully. This is the first time that a cargo of 3,000 tons, turbines for NTPC's Farakka thermal power unit, were carried, and a lot of pictures appeared in the press. For the first time, the inland waterways, the national waterway number 1 from Allahabad to Haldia was used. But it took 45 days because these tugs who were propelling the barges, they had to use javelin type poles to find out the draft, whether navigable channel is actually navigable or not. The lower pictures are again of the inland waterways, but disorganized. Yes, a state waterway which has been used well before the 80s is Zuari and Panjim rivers in Goa, because ore comes from as deep as 50 kilometers inside. And in the backwaters of Kerala, you see these two pictures where they are making a lot of money, and rightly so, from Indian and foreign tourists. This is a picture of Russia. In the Soviet days, huge warships used to be ballasted with pontoons attached to ships to make them navigable through rivers with just 4 meters of available depth, and carried along the Volga, the Don, the Moskva river, not just from Leningrad to Moscow, but also to the Black Sea with interconnected tributaries. But this is a story worth looking at. America. The Mississippi and Ohio River system is 12,000 land miles long, 21,000 kilometers. And it carries 2.5 billion tons of cargo annually. Pictures of inland waterways in America. This is the most important theorem that was broadcast to the world and to Americans by the American waterways operators to encourage their people to use their inland waterways. 1 gallon of fuel to move 1 ton of cargo. A truck would travel only 60 miles, a train 200 miles, land miles, and a barge in inland waterways 500 miles. Look at the proportions. But we have a habit of telling the world that you are not right. By volume and weight, we can do much better on trucks. Look at the 3-wheeler in the right lower corner. And we also try and tell the world that physics can be made to stand on its head, no, tail. But then if this is the story of rural India, actually we are happy that we are not doing what some other parts of the subcontinent do. The story of the train. So we are trying to prove the Americans wrong, insofar as inland waterways are concerned. But then India is far better than its northwestern neighbor, which thinks donkey power is horsepower. Now this is a picture which some of you might have come across a couple of months ago in Stratfor's email. So I tried to grab the article, and they then said, sorry, actually it was only a publicity stunt for their geopolitical review, but they will come out with an article like this. But it's a telling picture. Germany, with so many rivers and its tributaries, is not just a riparian state as compared to Italy, which has only 1 river. But it uses those rivers for economic progression. That's why it was the #1 exporter till 2010. Apart from the benefits of industrial revolution and other things. Coastal shipping, a truly sad story. You think parcel sizes are a constraint for coastal shipping? This vessel is carrying part of a complete industry somewhere in Norway. Of course, the destination has to be again on the coast. And it submerges in the water to offload, it submerges in the water to load. Part of a refinery by a vessel called Dockwise, the same vessel that carried one of our kilo-class submarines a couple of years ago, a number of kilo-class submarines to Russia for upgrade. These are the benefits. And you saw the ratios. In inland waters, it was 1:10 insofar as truck or road transport and water transport is concerned. In coastal shipping, it is 1:5. Only 7% of overseas traffic, whereas the potential is a lot more, but nobody is aware and nobody encourages it. Only 1% of overall domestic cargo movement, which most of it, 70% of it goes by lorries, is taken by coastal route. The cost of transportation by the coastal route, despite heavy taxation laws in our ports, is only 20% of equivalent by road and 40% of rail transportation. Indian coastal fleet is just 1 million tons and only 118 vessels are worth being used for on the coastal route. The disincentives, common Merchant Shipping Act provisions as for overseas trade, which are very stringent, which cost a lot of money. Bureaucracy at ports, particularly major ports. Taxation laws, 35% on domestic companies. And lack of awareness amongst the general masses on the benefits. Nature's bounty. There's no dearth of wind, constancy round the year on our two coasts. Not just because of the monsoons, because of the phenomena of the sea and the land breeze. So why don't we use it for windmills? Why don't we use it for solar power? Now that the cost of solar power has come down from 18 rupees to 8 rupees in India per unit. And as well, from 18 crores capital investment per megawatt, it has come down to about 8.5 rupees, 8.5 crores. Hydropower, power from the waves, the West is using it at not expensive technology now. And hybrids between wind and solar. The entire coastline is lying barren, ready for use for these two modes. These are pictures of windmills set up by the Germans on the Baltic and the North Sea coast. A complete array for a windmill farm. These are pictures of Denmark. Danish waters, as you know, have hardly any territorial waters in the Kattegat, Skagerrak and the Sound. And yet they use whatever breakwaters, etc. are available. This is a picture of the Galasomar field in Spain. Of course, it is on land. But it's a new technology insofar as solar power is concerned. The central tower actually sends up molten sodium hydrochloride, salt, at 500 plus degrees centigrade. And that is the one that finally that heat drives turbines, like conventional thermal power stations. Completely clean energy and very cheap. 15 hours of sunlight stores power for 24 hours. That's the central tower. The Helios UAV, the largest ever made by the Americans. I know the project has been stalled because of some accident, but it was being made to run for 24 hours on solar power alone. That is the kind of potential in temperate climates. And we get 300 days of clear sunshine in the tropics with the sun at 90 degrees. Tourism. Is there any dearth of tourist venues on the sea coast? Heritage sites? None. I've forgotten to add a picture of the Bora caves, 40 kilometers from Vizag. These are those lime cake caves, stalagmite and stalactite caves, which were discovered by a Brit in 1940 They are underground, and they date back 150 million years as per those analysts. I happened to visit Haiphong Harbor in Vietnam in 2010 and went to the Haiphong limestone caves, stalagmite caves, only 5 million years old, much smaller than Vizag caves. But the kind of lighting they had provided, they charged $5 per person. The boatman charged, mechanized boats, much better than those that you see in Gateway of India. And they offer all kinds of eatables, etc. So that and they take you through detours of those vertical rocks in Haiphong. It's an interesting journey. The guides make money. So why do we crib that, complain year after year that we get only 5 million footfalls of tourists, foreign tourists in a year? Last year, of course, we said our economy is really leapfrogged because of a large intake of domestic tourists as well. China had 33 million tourists last year. We had only 5. We have more heritage sites even on the sea coast, including some Buddha sites which have been discovered on the east coast. Now that I have spoken about opportunities, even though my topic is over, the maritime domain, untapped opportunities, I must speak about challenges which are always attendant to opportunities, security of economic assets, for a little while. Now, winds of change swept us all over the world, and particularly the maritime domain, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and later, after 9/11, maritime terrorism has actually taken hold. It is so bad that the direction of threat in the maritime domain and the nature of threat is now unpredictable. As if conventional threats were not enough, you have piracy which has shifted from Malacca Straits and the rest of Southeast Asia to the Gulf of Italy. Insurance rates for shipping went up 9-fold in 2008. Shippies started going on leave unless they were paid 2.5 times their salary. All added costs. And the Indian Navy, the Chinese Navy, the Pakistan Navy, the Japanese Navy, the US Navy, the EU Naval Force are still there in full force. All this is money and unnecessary effort. So there are, as if all this was not enough as challenges, 70% of the natural disasters that hit the world find the Indian Ocean as their home, including the tsunami which took place in 2004. What is the way ahead? Logistics, efficient evacuation in our ports, mechanization, activate inland waterways, which have eaten thousands of crores since 1986 and not encouraged people to use them. SOPs to boost shipbuilding, revise taxation laws to promote self-sufficiency, revamp fishing policy, make it organized, market coastal and marine tourism, incentivize FDI for seabed exploration. Procedures in major ports should be single window format like in private ports. Assets for the Navy and Coast Guard in order to meet the challenges. Infrastructure, creativity, communication, to sum it up. Ladies and gentlemen, a map is no good unless you know where you are. The enduring tragedy of India has been that our maritime environment has been pregnant with opportunities, not possibilities. We have refused to deliver. And we continue to say, हमें देखना है. The agendas are recommendation, NMDPs, etc. We need to actually act. And then you see employment generation. The maritime sector is a juggernaut in the waiting insofar as contribution to GDP is concerned, much more than the IT sector. But it's all lying latent. No, I didn't project it because I'm a Sardar and a lion is supposed to be a Singh. But I've always loved this MGM logo from my childhood. And normally people say, well begun is half done. So you would have thought this should have been put in the beginning. But then I'm always reminded of the original Santa, who in the 70s went to Ludhiana to a cinema hall which was to see a Western movie, which was run by MGM. And he saw the MGM logo, he was very impressed. 1 week later, a friend of his said, "Oh, now so-and-so movie is running." When he went, he saw this logo, "Hey, picture the see dekhi hui hai," and he walked out. So I didn't want the same to happen on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.